And now enough research basically shows that sleep is so important and quality of sleep, right?
Yes.
This is really important, right? That's the third thing. The fourth thing I talk, have some kind of mind body practice. It could be meditation, it could be prayer, anything which grounds and connects the mind body, right? So important. And the fifth thing is connection, have relationships,
Yeah.
connection. So physical distance doesn't mean there's no social connection, it has to go down. So have that fifth connection.
Welcome, everybody. This is Brad Blazer, your host of Beast Nation. And as many of you know, I like to bring on influential thought leaders, people of interest, and really dig deep into what makes people successful. Over the years, I've been called a lot of things, but today you can call me Robin Hood because I'm bringing knowledge, I'm bringing insight, and I'm bringing intellectual thought. My guest today is a serial entrepreneur, and I'm so excited because he also happens to be a close personal friend of somebody that I really admire and I've been following for a long time, and then, of course, Deepak Chopra. So welcome to our show today, Poonacha Machaiah.
Good morning,
Poonacha,
Brad.
welcome.
Good morning, Brad. It's a pleasure. Really look forward to this conversation. Love the work you do, transforming people's lives. And you know what? It's definitely a pleasure to have a conversation today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I want to jump right in visiting your website and in talking to you before bringing nation. One thing that we really got into and discussed was this concept of resiliency and what it means to be resilient. And one thing that I think is very interesting in learning a little bit more about you is you talk about resiliency, both for me as an individual, but also you talk about resiliency at the society level.
Mm-hmm.
So can you discuss what it means to be resilient and why that's so important?
Yeah, I think resiliency is probably one of the most important things we all have to learn. I think adversity is neutral. It does not
Yes.
discriminate whether you're rich or you're poor, you're young or you're healthy. I think one thing the COVID-19 epidemic has taught us, pandemic, is that it does not discriminate. Adversity hits everybody. How you react to adversity is what resilience is all about, right? So I think my goal has always been to see how do you make personal resiliency, a resilient body, your physical body, a resilient mind, resilient relationships, resilient in your career, and resilient in communities. So resilience comes in multiple flavors. And I think that's why today, look at well-being is more important more than ever before, right? I think now with the pandemic, people realize, forget about their jobs and all the things. It's like, what does well-being mean to you? How do you take care of yourself? Personal transformation, societal well-being. Without transforming the self, there is no society, right? So I always believe resilience is about how do you make people healthier in the
Yes.
body, mind, spirit. And you talk about belief, right? A big part of resiliency. And I think we're talking about Dr. Chopra, having worked with him, our belief, our goal has always been to reach 1 billion people, to create a joyful, energetic body, a loving, compassionate heart, a reflective and alert mind, and lightness of being. And if we can do that, we can transform the world at large. And that's why resilience, I'll give you another data point. When I tell people every 40 seconds, we lose somebody to suicide. In this great nation, the United States, every 12 minutes.
Wow.
Every day, we lose 22 veterans in this country to suicide. What is happening? There is a pandemic of mental health, right? So we have to make people more resilient. So that way, when adversity hits you, and you talk about it, what is your belief system that is going to take you over the finish line? How do you kind of transcend it? So that's really why I've kind of anchored my body of work over the years. You're an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur. But I think when I look back today, I think resilience is something I'm kind of like hanging my hat on, right? To bring it to our younger communities. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young adults, right after traffic accidents. So we need to make our children more resilient, right?
I love that. Now, one thing that you also do, which is very evident on your website, well-being, which I thought was the importance that technology plays in influencing our well-being.
Right. I think technology is neutral, right? I think technology is a tool. How we use technology is really, really important, right?
Yeah.
I think today, if you look at it, what I'm really passionate about is how do we scale mental health? right?
Mm.
So as we look at the camera today, we can look at even heart rate. There's a company called binah.ai. They can look at the camera on your phone and look at your heart rate variability, core body temperature. So literally, I want to paint you a vision. Your smartphone is going to be a therapist for life, right?
Wow.
It can look at the facial expression, the 15 micro expressions on your face.
Mm.
How's Brad feeling today, right? I can look at your heart rate variability, your breath, your galvanic skin response, your posture and gait. And all of a sudden, I can figure out, today what's happening is we are super connected, but very
Yeah.
lonely,
Yes.
right? We're very connected. We're every single social network on the planet. But guess what? With physical distancing, we're also distancing ourselves from people and communities. So technology can be a great ally in really understanding what is happening to somebody. I'm really passionate about technology helping our seniors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today we
Yes.
talk about our seniors who are in assisted living homes. We need to really monitor their well-being, right? The technology can play a great role because we cannot scale it with people. We can scale it with technology. So I really believe that technology and well-being go hand in hand.
Yes.
Imagine today that I can actually, a therapist can look at somebody remotely and say, this is what's going on.
Yeah. I find that so many people today, wear the Apple wristwatch, or of
Mhm.
course they have the Garmin. They're monitoring their heart rate. Of course, I wear a Garmin when I work out, when I go run, or when I cycle. But I think you're absolutely right, because using technology also to incentivize themselves for fitness. How many steps am I taking today? My goal is 10 steps. And I've also seen, of course, that technology is instrumental calculating things like your body mass, the percentage, of course, of body fat, and things
Right.
like that. So I certainly see a tremendous amount of applications there. Now, where did your interest in resiliency and well-being actually develop? Was it something that was instilled to you as a child in your upbringing? Was it more working in corporate America and you saw a lot of people, of course, that had weight issues or had diabetes, because
Yeah.
obviously there's so much stress, working a traditional 9 to 5 corporate America? Where did this interest really develop for you?
I am obviously with technology. I've always been in technology. I started my career in the US in technology. But in 2007, 2008, I went back to India on a 1-year vacation.
Yeah.
And when I went to India on a vacation, I realized, oh my God, a lot of things have changed. There is no concept of a therapist in India.
Mhm.
Therapist in India is basically your friends and family. Let's have a cup of tea, right? And I saw a city like Bangalore, which is Silicon Valley of India in 2000, 2008, was going through a mental health crisis. There was a spike. Then I also realized the villages of India, not a whole lot have changed, right? I mean, so technology could become a very good way to democratize access to well-being. That
Mm.
really started my thought process, saying that, how can I use everything I've learned in the US in the technology and really scale it, bring it to everybody out there, really make it accessible. Along the same time, I was hiking in the Himalayas and I had this thing called high altitude pulmonary edema. I
Mm.
almost died. And it was a reset moment for me. I realized wow, what happened? And in
Yes.
2004, one of my best friends, who was my chief operating officer, one of my startups in the US, had a sudden cardiac arrest and passed away in Herndon, Virginia.
Mm.
That got me thinking. I'm like, he had just gone for a medical checkup 1 week before. And I
Yeah.
said, that's not really working. So the once a year medical checkup ain't going to work. We need to
Mm.
have continuous monitoring. And how could we kind of really, we are super connected, Brad.
Yeah.
We're very lonely. That's one. Two, where is the village? It takes a
Mm.
village to bring up a child. Where is the village? We
Yeah.
don't have intimacy anymore, right? When I came to this country and I loved the community centers. We all hung out. People are getting so fragmented, so distributed. So then I started looking back and saying, what? I really need to focus on well-being. And
Mm.
that really became, and then that journey got me to meet Dr. Chopra. And over the last decade, we've been very focused looking at well-being of personal transformation and societal well-being. If I can make you healthy, first, that's why joyful, energetic body, then love and compassion, then reflection, then who am I, right? If you have back pain, no amount of meditation is going to help you fix the
Yeah.
back pain. And that really became my moment. Like if I can get people healthy, right? If I can, so stress is one of the biggest enemies, right? Everybody's stressed. We are a super stressed out society. And that's really the mental health crisis. If I
Yeah.
get people to move better, eat better, sleep better, connect with community and nature, I think we can solve a lot of problems. So that really started my journey towards looking at well-being and really helping even entrepreneurs. Because like, entrepreneurship is not a sprint, it's a marathon,
Right.
right?
Right.
And you need to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, have your friends and family, because you're going to have those down days, right?
Yeah.
And when you're deep down, you need somebody to give you a pick me up. And that really started combining my passion for entrepreneurship, well-being, and then resilience.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there that you said, and I agree,
Mm.
because one of the things that I communicate to my students is really your health is your wealth. You need to be physically fit. You need to be, of course, sound body and sound mind, because you see things here in your mind, but obviously there's a tremendous connection between the mind and the body.
Right.
It's so powerful when you write your goals down, because now you can actually visualize your goals. There's a process we call implantation, where you're implanting your thoughts onto a piece of paper, then you can see them and obviously back them with action. But one thing that I think is so very important is you've actually taken this belief one step further in your partnership with Dr. Chopra in the creation of a company really built around well-being, which is Jayo. So can
Yeah.
you tell us what Jayo is and really what the focus is there?
Yeah, so Jayo, right now exited Jayo to the Chopra Center. Before we exited Jayo, Jayo was all about bringing well-being to communities and corporations. It was all about corporate well-being. Just think about your biggest asset as a corporation is your employees and your team, right?
Correct.
And how do you look at their well-being? Because today you have this whole thing about how do you look at employee well-being? I think we have to move from a disease health system to a prevention health system. So our
Yes.
goal with Jayo was to really look at well-being of people and communities. So we basically had 7 pillars of well-being: nourish, help people eat better, help
Mhm.
people move better, help people sleep better, help people manage their emotions, give them a mind-body practice, connect them with community and nature, right? And then that's really became the pillars of well. That became Jayo. But after Jayo, where we are focused on now with Dr. Chopra and me and the actor humanitarian Gabriella Wright, is on a movement called Never Alone. It's called
Mm.
neveralone.love. It's part of the Chopra Foundation and really focused on mental well-being. Because we believe now that once we can help people with their mental well-being, we talk about the pandemic today, but the next big pandemic is the mental health crisis. We're already seeing it, right? Our children today are no longer playing out. It's summer. They should be playing out and hanging out with their friends. They're on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
What are we doing to the next generation? How can we help their well-being? So we're really passionate about really focusing, doubling down on mental health. That's really my passion right now with Dr. Chopra and Gabriella Wright.
Now, in the relationship with Dr. Chopra and the work that you're doing there, how did you actually meet Dr. Chopra?
Yeah, this is in 2007, I think I was doing this startup in India called QK. I
Yes.
realized in 2007 there was a lot of suicide. There was the mental health rate crisis was going up in India. Nobody talks about it. It's a stigma. It's a taboo. And I realized I needed to do something, but nobody wants to talk about mental health. So I said, what if we can bring in music and dance and arts together? So I partnered with two of the biggest brands in India,
Yes.
Shekhar Kapur, a very famous director, Elizabeth the Golden Age, and A.R. Rahman, Slumdog Millionaire. And we created this network to connect people. That's the time I met Dr. Chopra. And we connected in Bangalore, India, ironically. And then over the years, I've become really good friends. And I would have to say he's my best friend and an advisor and mentor. And I owe a great deal of lot to him.
Sure.
And that's how we started our journey. Literally, he says, Poonacha, my goal is to reach 1 billion people. And then he gave me his tagline: joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, reflective and alert mind, and lightness of being. I said, sign me up, right? And over the years, everything we have done has aligned in that. So that's even today. Our goal is to really look at how do you help communities together, right?
Mhm.
And individuals.
I love that. Now, in addition to working alongside Deepak Chopra and obviously learning from him
And,
as a mentor and as one of the world's greatest thought leaders, what other big thought leaders have influenced you personally in kind of the way you think?
there are multiple people. I mean, I think they're thought leaders, but they're also everyday heroes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I am a big believer, even though there's a lot of influencers and thought leaders, some people I would come to mind. I look at my dad,
Mm,
right, who was a retired police officer in India, the epitome of resilience, right?
love
I
that.
look at my mom, right? I mean, who is basically gave up her career to take care of me and my sister.
Mm,
Resilience. I mean, really molded us who I am today. And then I
yes.
look at people like Rahman, right, who's a Oscar award winning music composer. I mean, his dedication to his craft, right?
Yeah.
So the different people have influenced me in different walks of life. And a lot of them have been everyday people. It's
Mhm.
literally been, so I look at my life as a collage of interactions, like you've inspired me, right? Looking at, so no more than one person or two people, I look at everyday interactions, right? And that's the magic in which we live in. Every day I wake up in the morning, I say, okay, what's going to unfold today? Infinite possibilities. Am I open to it, right?
Yeah. You're obviously in the middle of your life.
Yeah.
You obviously had a very, very rewarding life. But if you could go back to yourself as a child, would you tell the a young Poonacha that's 6 or 7 years old, maybe with some of the lessons that you've learned from that point in age to where you are today? Some of the
Mm.
things maybe that you wish you had known as you were growing up, maybe some things that you've learned along the journey that you would share with a youngster.
I thank you. That's a good question. I grew up in India, and one of the biggest things in India is that fear of failure, right?
Mm,
You're basically taught to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. And it comes from scarcity because, obviously after the British rule, we had scarcity mindset. Nothing
sure.
wrong what it is, just the way it was, right? And I went to a Jesuit school, which I'm so grateful for, the St. Joseph's Boys High School, an amazing school. I was brought up by Jesuit priests who were really pushed me in
Yeah.
sports and athletics. And I was a big guy, played all the sports. But, I didn't want to fail as much. I think I
Yeah.
played very safe, right?
Mm,
And I would say fail often, fail fast, pick up, keep moving. And that's what I would tell Poonacha, just, follow your passion, follow your dream.
yes.
I grew up in a household where my dad was a tough guy. He says, grown men don't cry, right?
Mm,
That's what you do. You take up martial arts, you do this, you do that. I would go back and pick up the arts today. I would say, Poonacha, you should pick up music in painting younger, pursued music earlier on. And
love
I
that.
think those are some of the things I would change. I would change because I think not because my dad thought that way, because that's where he came from. In fact, I reconciled with him. I says,
Yeah.
Dad, you were so tough with me on my 40th birthday. I spoke to him. I said, why were you so tough? My hair had to be really short, like nothing like. He said, son, you're absolutely right. You know what? I screwed up with you, but I think you did perfectly fine. He said, you know
Yeah.
what? Now you have two boys. Having a father, you don't get a user manual. You
Right.
figure it out.
Right.
Every generation does better than the other previous generation. Now it's your turn. Do
Yeah.
better with your kids. Do better with your boys. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I would go back and I would go back and fail more, right? Not
Yeah.
play so safe.
I love that because I think one of the biggest fears people have is not the fear of failing. It's really the fear of those around them, the people that they love and that they're the closest to. It's really the judgment of other people. It's
Right.
what will my parents think if I fail, or what will my siblings think, or my closest friends, or my cousins, my aunts and uncles. And what you have to realize is that really you have to really look at yourself and love
Right.
yourself first. It's all about loving yourself and really doing the things that are going to make you happy. I think the funny thing as I look at the different generations, boomers that are 55, 65, look at
Mm-hmm.
millennials, look at the Gen Xers, there's been a huge change in what's expected of them. And more importantly, of course, I think the way they live. Because I think in the baby boomer generation, and of course with a lot of people, is we grow up trying to fit this mold of what is
Mm-hmm.
expected of us. Our
Mm-hmm.
parents tell us we're saving, we're scrimping, we're working two jobs to put you through college so that you can have a college education and go off and get a good job and have a career. And so as we grow up as young children, that's the expectation. And obviously we try to live up to the expectations of our parents. But a lot of times, once we actually step into that role, we lack happiness.
Yeah.
We find that we're not really fulfilled. And so I really part of the journey of finding yourself is really asking internally and introvertly, what's my why? What really makes me passionate? And then obviously, how can I do find passions to be happy?
I think I'm reminded of this quote from a very famous philosopher, Jiddu Krishnamurti. He lived in Novi, California. And his one sentence he said was, comparison and conformity lead to conflict. A
Yeah.
mind without conflict is a spiritual mind, right?
Yeah.
We always, when you grow up, you're either comparing or conforming. I'm 50-year-old Indian male. I should look this way, dress this way, the bank account should be this way. I'm a CEO. So then you're screwed for the rest of your life because children don't have that comparison. They're
Yeah.
just running around naked, hanging out with each other. They don't know black, white, Indian, doesn't really matter which country they're from. And then we tell them, oh, Poonacha, you're Indian. This is who you are. This is what it is. And then you're kind of constantly fighting this identity. and comparison and conformity. So if we can live without comparison and conformity, that's true freedom. True freedom.
Yes, and I would say that that's probably the one thing that so many people are looking for is the freedom. You always ask people, what motivates you about making a lot of money? And if it's the material things like the cars and the wristwatches and the nice homes, the chances of success are obviously reduced dramatically, because really the pursuit of wealth and the pursuit of obviously being successful should be for something much bigger than that. And for a lot of people, it's really the freedom. It's being able to do what you want to do with whom you want to do it at a time in life, of course, that you choose to do it with. Let me ask, because it's such an important part of your life, when you talk to people that approach you and that are unhealthy, maybe they need to lose 20 pounds, maybe they have diabetes, how do you begin the process of guiding the path of well-being? Does it start with nutrition? Does it start with exercise? Does it start with beliefs, or is it really all of the above?
So I would say I start with some very tiny habits. I said, just make some very tiny changes. Like Professor B.J. Fogg talks about it, tiny habits, right? And he has a very interesting formula. B is equal to MAT. Behavior is equal to motivation, ability, and a trigger. You got to trigger the behavior. The first thing I start with, I say, change your nutrition, right? A very small thing. Just look at your nutrition. And once again, today, it's not like the keto diet or this diet or that diet. You can go precision. We are in an age today where you can be very precise about what works for you and your body, right? So I tell them to go take a gut microbiome test, right? Example like Viome, right? So you can go look at your gut microbiome and say, okay, what works for Poonacha's gut, right? And so because there is between the gut and the brain is the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve. So it's actually your gut and brain are connected. Basically, if your gut is disrupted, then your sleep is disrupted. So reduce chronic low-grade inflammation. That is the number one thing. If you can reduce inflammation in the body, a lot of things can go away. And Dr. Chopra talks about it. 95%, of diseases can be managed through lifestyle modification. So if we can actually just look at our nutrition, that's the first one, right? Look what works for your body, understand it, and then fine-tune it. Instead of following any fad diet, see what works. Today we're in the area of precision genomics, epigenome, genome, microbiome, map it, figure it out, right? Biohack yourself. Once you understand your nutrition, the second thing is movement. And movement doesn't mean, 10,000 steps is great. Just move, right? It's like, just move. If you're sitting, stand more, right?
Yeah.
If you're standing, walk more. If you're walking,
Right.
run more, right? So just take baby steps. Don't try to say, I'm going to run a marathon, right? Just take tiny steps. The third most important thing, which is really something I think is an American thing, people really feel guilty sleeping. And now enough research basically shows that sleep is so important, and quality of sleep, right?
Yeah.
This is really important, right? That's the third thing. The fourth thing have some kind of mind-body practice. It could be meditation, it could be prayer, anything which grounds and connects the mind-body, right? So important. And the fifth thing is connection, have relationships, connection.
Yeah.
So physical distance doesn't mean there's no social connection, it has to go down. So have that fifth connection. And the sixth one, I say, just connect with nature, walk bare feet. You now know when you connect with nature, walk bare feet, it actually reduces oxidative stress in the body, reduces inflammation. So you don't need to sign up for gym membership. You don't need to go and sign up any expensive programs. Just listen to your body. Take baby steps, right? Nourish, move, healthy emotions, sleep, connect with nature and community, right?
You brought up something that I think is so very important that I'm actually seeing, I won't say falling apart, but I actually see that when you talk about relationships, I think today we live in a society that is so digitized, so technology driven, that we lack the ability to communicate with other people and really to establish strong relationships, strong bonds with people. And I predicted that, 10 years from today, one of the highest paying jobs in the world will not be as an engineer. It will not be as a surgeon. It will actually be teaching people how to have relationships.
Right.
Because what I see, even when I go to restaurants, is a father and a son. The father will be on his cell phone. The son will be there with an iPad, and there's no interaction between a father and a the sun. I mean, here where I live, maybe 2 or 3 doors down, I really don't know the neighbors on my
Right.
street like I used to back in the 70s or 80s when I was growing up, and we would always have kids come over and we would be playing
Right.
kickball, or we would have our neighbors over and we would just sit on the patio. And what was really interesting is a few years ago, I was reading an article about the success of Starbucks
Mm.
and why Starbucks was so successful. And it wasn't that it was a cup of coffee, it came as a replacement for your front porch.
Right.
So that if you lived in a neighborhood to get your Starbucks coffee, if you stood and you sat down and you read your paper, you would see regulars. You would see people that lived within that neighborhood or that community that you almost see on a daily basis. And I thought that that was really interesting because it came back to what we lack in society, which is really building strong bonds and relationships with other people, which is such an important part of living a well-balanced life. You know, Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, discusses that I just absolutely love.
Right.
And the whole person theory really talks about your mind, your body, your spirit, and your soul. And obviously, each one of those drives a certain thing in your well-being, your passion, your connection with other people, your level of fitness, your thoughts. And what a lot of people don't understand is you have to have balance or harmony, because if one thing is out of sync, it obviously affects the other. It's,
Mhm.
you know, not good to have a lot of your health is failing, and you know, the doctor tells you that you know, you have a terminal illness. So it's all about balance, I think. One
Yeah.
thing that I want to really discuss with you is when you were growing up as a child in India, and then of course you came over to the United States to study, was health and fitness and well-being something that was discussed in your family, or did you learn it later in life?
Yeah, I want to come to the second question. I want to answer, but before I go there, I want to respond to your first part about society and community, because it's a very important point you make. Let me tell you a story. We are designed to be social animals, right? Think about it. 10,000 years ago, we were on the tundra. We
Yeah.
hunted together, we gathered together, we slept together. When we slept, somebody tended the fire. Somebody looked to make sure that the saber-toothed tiger wasn't attacking us, right? So now we were kind of very comfortable. So our body was wired basically to be in communities. So let's say I got separated from my group. Every time I walked, if I heard a twig crack, I would think it's actually a saber-tooth tiger. My body goes into chronic inflammation, stress, right? I would not be able to handle that stress for 2 long periods of time until I got back into my tribe, and then I was okay. So what happens when you are actually lonely, right? You actually, your stress levels are higher. Your chronic, basically you're on what you call sympathetic overdrive. So you're thinking there's going to be a saber-tooth tiger because my tribe is not there to walk for me. Now there's research which shows that people who sleep alone in the homes have this thing called microarousal. They actually wake up periodically of the time, even though they sleep for 8 hours. So we are designed to live together, to share together, and nothing has changed. In fact, the former Surgeon General says loneliness is an epidemic of our times. We have to come together. We have to really, because there is something about being together, which is so important. Nobody talks about it, but that is probably our salvation, right? That's why churches, communities, temples, whatever, right? They were grounds for people to meet. Okay, that's a very important point. So talking about health and wellness, I grew up in my family. My father, being a police officer, always made it an important aspect of my life to be fit. I come from a community in India. We were called like the warrior community. So fitness was always part of it. Having said that, I don't know. I think right now I would like to say, and people like in India, I don't think they're taking care of themselves. I think the highest diabetes population is there in India. People take it for granted. We're the land of yoga and Ayurveda. But what's also happening with the burgeoning middle class? Everybody's busy making a lot of money. Nobody's taking care of their health, right? And we take it for granted. That the West, I think, understands yoga and Ayurveda and lifestyle better than I think parts of India does. Might be controversial, but I think that's the truth.
You know, one thing I think that's obviously affecting everybody's stress and, of course, health today around the world is, of course, the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
It's worrying, have I had coronavirus? Maybe I should go get tested. Maybe I haven't had it, and therefore I'm avoiding people. I'm avoiding congregating coronavirus, and how, of course, you should assimilate, of course, dive into is something I know that you're very, very passionate about, and that is, of course, your Warrior Monk.
Right.
Tell us about the Warrior Monk.
Yeah, so Warrior Monk is a brand I started looking at resilience, and I imagined this world, and I said, I looked at my kids and I said, what will their dad think of? What will they think of their dad? And I said, Dad, what do you think of this perfect world? And I thought about it and I said, I'd imagine a world where no one should ever feel helpless or hopeless. And that's a world I believe in. I want to live, at least in my life, I want to see that world. That's a dream. Like nobody should ever feel helpless or hopeless. And the helpless part, the warrior always helps the helpless. And the monk provides hope to the hopeless. And that really became the essence. So the warrior helpless. So how do I help people have a stronger body? How do I help people have a stronger mind? And that really became the physical aspect of it. And that's where I kind of started looking at what are the supplements I can have to reduce chronic low-grade inflammation? What are the supplements I can have to help people boost their immune function, the brain function, nootropic? What sort of content can I have to help children in schools? And that's really what I'm actually launching a book called The Warrior Monk Resilience for Children, to teach resiliency for children, like, through animals, right? A is for ant, but ant is really small, but carries 4 times its body weight. So even if you're small, you can be big, right? So I'm really looking at content, products to really help people help in the body-mind relationships. And that's really the essence of the Warrior Monk brand.
One thing I love about that concept, and you were talking about the ant, is I think the reason a lot of people don't do more in life is they reach a level of complacency, of comfort, and therefore they don't push themselves, don't exert themselves with greater intensity. And I think one of the great things coach is you're able to see potential in other people that they sometimes don't see in themselves. And then, like you said earlier, Poonacha, it's with small adjustments in habits, right, getting them to work a little bit harder, adding a new habit to their day, maybe adding a new thing to their daily routine, so that they start seeing success, they start earning more money. And what that does over time, people don't understand, is it creates a new belief system, because at the end of the day, we're really a product of our beliefs. And so many
absolutely right
beliefs that are carried back to childhood. What they have to realize is how they can challenge those things. Really, I look at the mind almost like a garden. Mm-hmm. Look at the limiting self-doubt like weeds, and I look at the positive thoughts like towering oaks that are reaching up for the sky. And I explain to people that every time you have a limiting belief or you feel like something is holding you back, you have to step back and challenge that and say, is that really true? Is that truth? Or is it something there that's a limiting belief that if I just take a faith and I face my fears and I move forward, I'll prove to myself that I'm actually capable of doing something great in life. And of course, once you achieve that, your confidence level goes way through the roof, because then you realize you can go on and do other great things, right? Mm-hmm. The best way for people to connect with you on your social media or through your website?
I think Instagram is the best. I think it's Warrior Monk is my Instagram handle. My website is The Warrior Monk, and that's an easy way to get in touch with me. And I think I always believe that, I always respond to people, because I really believe that people should not feel they're alone. You're never alone, right? Another good website is neveralone.love. And that's a website we're building purely based on mental health. We're building out a bunch of tools and platforms to help people all over the world.
Wonderful. Well, this has been another wonderful episode of Beast Nation. Poonacha, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and actually being our guest. Everybody, reach out to the Warrior Monk. Follow him on Instagram. Go to his website. Download his free book, Resiliency. And again, this is Brad Blazer. Until next time.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for inspiring, and I'm inspired. Thank you.